Hey, great day, everyone. Welcome back to the live stream of the Creator Podcast. I am your host, Dr. TK, licensed clinical psychologist and therapist business coach. And so, as promised, as we started last week when we kicked off Mental Health Awareness Month, I told you that we have a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline for YouTube, for podcasts, and also for Instagram. And so, what I decided to do is bring back some live interviews with some epic therapists and healers. And today is no different, but we're going to add a twist on it. If you've been paying close attention to our communities tab over here on YouTube and or on Instagram, I have been heavily talking about how therapists are re-traumatizing themselves, but really what we're talking about today is self-care. That is one of the biggest areas that I have seen over about 8 to 10 years at this point, that therapists and healers are lacking taking care of themselves. So this time when I had the opportunity of having different conversations offline, and I met a few clinicians and healers that focused on self-care, I really wanted to hold off on their interview until Mental Health Awareness Month, because that's when therapists pay attention. And so I am going to bring on our guest. She is going to do a brief introduction of herself, because I love for them to tell y'all about their journey of becoming a healer. Some of our interview guests are therapists, but I'm going to bring Miss Lenaya on the screen. And please head over to the comment box. Let us know, what are your biggest takeaways? Because I understand some of y'all may have clients if you have a private practice or you're at your job, but let her know what you are enjoying about what she is talking about. And by all means, if you have questions, please put them in the comment box, and then we will pause throughout the interview today, the conversation today, and pull those questions on the screen as well. And don't forget to subscribe. And so let's welcome our guest. Hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Yes. So everybody go over to the chat box and let us know where y'all from. Y'all already know how I get down. So we got Atlanta in the house. All
Yes.
right. Okay. So can you do a brief introduction from, I know you do both sides, therapist and healer. So can you give them a little mix about your background?
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you for having me. And so my name is Lenaya Smith Crawford, also known as the Holistic Therapist. And I am really on a mission to make holistic mental health and healing more accessible, inclusive, and relatable. And so I do that by training and equipping therapists with tools to be able to integrate holistic healing practices into their work more ethically, but also reminding therapists to prioritize their self-care and healing holistically as well. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation. It's something that's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know before we start going live, I had let her know that we have like 3 different groups of people who watch either the YouTube streams or listen to our podcast. So we have, of course, mental health current providers and healers. We also have upcoming and rising future therapists or healers that are in grad school. Some are in undergrad. So they're very amazed at like just the diverse amount of things that they can do. And then, of course, we also have the general public. And so I say all that because we all have different acronyms behind our name. And so some people don't know, even like in California, we know what LMFT means. But can you go a little bit deeper in terms of like your mental health background?
Yes. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist by trade. And so I started my career primarily working with families and couples and helping them to heal from things like anxiety, depression, and trauma. I'm also an advanced certified yoga, breathwork, and meditation teacher. I'm also a sound healer, a retreat coordinator, and a wellness CEO. And so I have had the honor of, being in different facets in the mental health field. I am one of the therapists like yourself, Dr. TK, who really believes that, the traditional view of therapists is way more expansive, right? So it's not just us in a therapy office, private practice. We're doing things like leading retreats and business coaching and integrating ancient healing practices. And so I really am coming from this integrative approach. And so really honoring that we have many layers of ourselves. And I know we'll get into that when we talk about self-care, but my biggest thing as a holistic therapist is understanding that we've got many layers. And in order for us to heal, we have to address those layers.
Yeah. So we got some. Let me go ahead and shout them out because they talking to you in the chat
Okay,
box.
thank
So we
you.
have Angela from Atlanta. We have, hey, Dr. Tracy. She said, hey, amazing. And then we have Melissa. Yes, look, we get excited when we see the same acronym because they change
Yes,
so much across state by state. But Melissa's one of our clients and she's one of our support coaches in our academy program. And she started hosting her own retreats and selling out her spots too. So, and she
I
works with,
love that.
so like I got my pen, y'all, just in case y'all see me looking down. So I'm writing notes about what you're talking about. So let's go back first to the integrative approach. When did you recognize in your either academics or career that that was like the best direction to go? Because in school, we're like tunnel vision. You have to make a choice. You have to choose the practicum or internship correctly. So how did you make that decision and like why?
Yeah, so I have always understood that in order for us to truly heal, we have to integrate all layers of ourselves. My parents are pastors, and so I grew up with the understanding that in order for you to heal, you have to connect the mind, body, and spirit. I also went to a master's program that taught us how to integrate spirituality into our work. And throughout my time learning how to become a therapist, I was also in a yoga teacher training program, a trauma sensitive teacher training program, and learning how to do all of these things because I knew that it required more than just talking. And not reducing therapy to just talking, but that's the primary way that we process. It required more than that for us to truly embody the kind of healing and joy and authenticity that we all seek. And so it's been something that's been a part of my journey since day one. I was very intentional about doing the trainings and doing the things while I was in grad school. And so, taking everything that I've learned along the journey and integrating it with my clients. But I will say that I truly didn't have a deep understanding of the necessity of this
Mm,
integrative approach until I was in the depths of my healing journey, right? And
mhm.
feeling burnt out and experiencing depression and feeling like I was compartmentalizing all of who I was. And so when I took a holistic approach to my healing, I was like, I'm a living testimony that in order for us to truly heal and to truly experience that authenticity and joy, you have to integrate all of you into your healing journey.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You said so many key things, but I know one of the ones that is troubling more so because I believe that a lot of therapists and healers have learned how to mask their
Mm,
own burnout. That a lot of them don't even know how to define it when it's happening to them. And I know for myself, even I've went through. I talk about seasons in business, and because of also like how you talked about the whole integrative approach, my upbringing, if we go back to 2020, everything being like a full throttle 24-month rush of a lot of stuff. And then now we're in a different type of economical shift that causes different conversations and different shifts that you have to make, not just in your business, not just at your job, but also in your relationships.
mm.
For parents who send their kids to daycare, like it's so many external and internal things that can cause burnout that it is not talked about enough. So how I don't even know how to ask this. I have so many questions. Like, how would you first define burnout? And then
Mhm.
what have you seen it look like amongst healers that you have worked with or therapists?
Yes. I mean, burnout is like, I'm not going to, sound too super educated, but it's like when you've had enough, okay?
Yeah.
When you're tired, all right? When you're so tired that you can't even do the things that you had on your calendar to do, when you're dreading, right? The things that you have to get off your to-do list. I think it is being in a state of knowing that
Mhm.
you're tired, right? You've had enough. And it's almost like this feeling of feeling like you're treading water, right? You
Mhm.
might take a break here, take a break there, but it's just enough for you to take a breath before you start to feel like you're drowning almost. That's the way I can describe burnout. And I wholeheartedly agree with what you
Yeah.
said about therapists and healers having a mask, right? We feel like we've got to have it all together sometimes. We feel like in order for us to show up for our clients, we can't, acknowledge the pain. We can't acknowledge the depression. We can't acknowledge those things. But we're doing ourselves a disservice when we don't understand that in order for us to truly show up for our clients and our communities, we have to first prioritize our self-care and our healing.
So how would that look like? Like, let's just say if you have, well, I know it can look different one-on-one versus retreat, and maybe we can go into that. how would you approach someone who is dealing with stress or burnout? And how could that look differently when you're working with them one-on-one versus when you have your retreats? And you can get into like what kind of retreats do you have to?
Yes, absolutely. So I lead what's called the Healers Retreat, where I take therapists and healers to international destinations where we can get away from the day to day and only focus in on prioritizing our self care and pouring into our cup. I actually just got back from Costa Rica 2 days ago. Yeah, so we run our right. So I'm like, whoo, just, this is perfect timing. But first, before I talk about that, I really want to talk about holistic self-care and the difference between holistic self-care and just like your traditional self-care. Oftentimes when you ask folks, like, what is self-care? They'll say things like, I'm going to go take a bubble bath. I'm going to do my nails. I might have a massage, or, you know what I'm saying? I might journal or what have you. But a lot of times when we're talking about self-care, we're only really addressing our physical bodies. We're only addressing the physical aspect of ourselves. And so I really like to come from this holistic approach, really in anything that I do, which essentially says that there are 5 key layers to us as humans and 5 key layers for us to heal and to prioritize our self-care. And so that is the physical layer. So that's where, the beautification, the bubble baths, the working out, and all those things come into play. But we also have the energetic layer, which is our energy. What are we doing energetically? How are we managing our energy? How are we making sure that we are prioritizing and making sure our energy is in good spaces? So things like breath work, sound healing, things like making sure the people that you are around the relationship is reciprocal, right? Things like that. And then you also have the mental and emotional layer. So how are your emotions? How are you honoring your emotions? How are you showing up in your thinking? How are you shifting your thinking, right? How are you labeling your emotions as someone who helps others label their emotions? And then you have the spiritual layer, right? So how are you connecting spiritually? Depending on whatever your religious background is, how are you connecting to God? How are you connecting to source? And then finally, the communal layer. How are you being in community? And I think that's a really important piece. In this Western world, we've gotten away from the importance of community and how healing community can be. And so that's one of the reasons, going back to the retreats, why I think it's so special for us as therapists and healers to get together, take off the mask and say, hey, I'm a human too, girl, this is what I'm going through, right? And be poured into. And so that is what I think is really, really important as we talk about self-care specifically for therapists and healers.
Yeah. So you already mentioned it, and somebody already mentioned in the chat box, like retreats, I told my husband yesterday, because he works in the company, I said, what's crazy is that, like, when I talk to the therapists in our community, they're like, I want to connect, I want to be in person. And then when we make it available, it's like, I don't know. But I'm like, I bet you if I told them to meet me like in another country, I bet you they'll find a way. Like all of us, it is really interesting, probably because they want to fully, I know I do, I want to fully detach sometimes and get into a new environment and embrace what's around me. So walk us through your retreats and who it's for and some of the benefits that past participants have experienced when they were there.
Absolutely. So the Healers Retreat, just like you said, we're taking you out of your day-to-day environment and we're putting you in a place with other women who get it. I've been on retreats, and I'm sure maybe you've had this experience too, or maybe the folks watching live. Have you ever gone on a retreat or a trip, and the moment you tell them that you're a therapist or a healer, baby, it turns into a therapy session. They want to pick your brain. They want to unleash and unload. And so, I wanted to create a space. I know you're laughing because I'm sure you've experienced that.
Can't go nowhere.
That part. So I wanted to create a space where, where we get it, right? We all are in this field. We're all in this place of helping and pouring and giving. And so it makes it such a special experience when you know that the woman next to you understands what it's like to give and to pour, and for you all to be in the space of pouring into your cup. I'm thinking about the last dinner that we had in Costa Rica, where I had everyone share, like, what was your biggest highlight of being here and being on retreat? And it was consistent across the board. the women were saying I was able to take my mask off. I was able to honor my humanness, right? I was able to express and, talk about things that I normally don't get to talk about. I was able to just be myself and pour into my cup and not have to worry about all the other things that I have to manage. Being a therapist, healer, moms, all the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the Healers Retreat is truly a safe space for therapists, helpers, and healers to pour into the cup. And each retreat we have a theme that we focus in on. And so this past retreat was all about embodied joy. And what does it mean to embody and live in joy? What does it mean for you to notice the tiny joys all around you in conjunction with taking the time to pour into your cup?
That's good. That's good. Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking about, oh, wait, let me just check. Are we freezing on our end? Oh, wait, it's you. Hold on. Everybody, hold on for just a second. Lenaya, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, there it is. It's coming back. You have frozen our end, and because I was trying to see if it was just mine, and so our team said it is glitching out. Yours?
Oh no.
Can you see? I know you can see me moving fine. Can you see if you're moving fine?
Yeah, I haven't yet.
Okay, it's back. It's back a little bit. So I can hear you, but like your screen is freezing.
Oh no. Okay.
Let me check out the chat box too. So Miss Sonia, she was on here last week and she said, I don't tell people I'm a therapist. She's from New York. I think a lot of us can probably all
relate to that.
Could relate to that, the point where you don't want to tell anybody anything outside of you help people. Because I mean, anybody, like a teacher, can help people. You feel me?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, as you were talking, I was just thinking about our community. And one of the things that I will say it happens more on phone calls with our students who are scaling their business, but it happens more in writing, like in our Facebook community for our private practice clients. And some of the things that have been coming up recently, first from the team. So let me explain this because some of them are watching. Our team goes in the back office and we look at the performance of our students because it's a course, right? And then we want to see how is the course translating to wins in the coaching calls or whatnot. And we've seen some lack over the last 2 years with just the decline in people. Hell, don't want no online course. Let's be real, right? But we've seen a significant decline in performance. And what we've started to have conversation around and also encourage our clients to do is there anything else, if you choose to share, in the way that is preventing you from growing your business? Because we all know we can't take stress and push it to the side. To a degree, you probably can, depending on your tolerance and maybe your level of trauma in the past, with dealing with the trauma, because some of us can mask it. But at some point, your body's going to keep score. I love that topic. And it's going to show up. Mm-hmm. So, like, what kind of, I guess, suggestions or tips or even practices that you do? I know you mentioned like breathwork and all these things. Can you talk to the therapists that are stressing out right now for a variety of reasons, but they're masking it and trying to push through, but it's still showing up whether they can see it or not, because we see it?
Yes, that part. So I am a big believer in being an embodied entrepreneur, right? Entrepreneurship, we got into entrepreneurship to create freedom for ourselves. But what happens, right, when you're creating this freedom, but by the time you get to being free, you're burnt out and can't enjoy it. I can't, tell you how many times I've heard folks talk about they've scaled their business, they sold their business, but they're burnt out and they spent the next 2 years rediscovering themselves. And so I think it's important to understand that, life comes first, right? This life balance is really, really important. And it's really important to integrate these practices along the way. So that 5-pronged approach that I talked about, it really is transferable to healing, to business, to self-care. And I think that when we can truly take that approach into our businesses, it allows for more room for us to show up as our, full selves. And so for me, one of the things that I, highly suggest is along the way, create room for yourself to pour into your cup, right? Not everyone has the means to go on a retreat. Not everyone has the means to do that. But I'm a big believer, if you can just take 5 consistent minutes a day, you will notice it on the back end, right? So I love sound baths and I love breath work. Those are two practices that I integrate into all of the things that I do. And so if you're someone who wants, practices that are effective, that really help the energetic, the mental and emotional, and just really all the layers of yourself, I think that sound healing and breath work and maybe a little bit of movement can really, really be beneficial. And so, when I say 5 minutes a day, Dr. TK, I really mean 5 uninterrupted minutes, right?
Uninterrupted is keyword.
Minutes.
Uninterrupted.
Uninterrupted minutes, right? Where you can just notice your breath. Maybe you're guided in a sound bath. Maybe you do a little movement, and that is your 5 minutes to pour into your cup. And so folks are always like, okay, Lenaya, I roll 5 minutes a day. Like, let's be for real. And I was like, well, have you tried it consistently? Because the people that do it consistently, they always come back and say, you know what, Lenaya, you were right. I wasn't being consistent in the 5 minutes, or I was on my phone during the 5 minutes, or I was being distracted by something else. And so I would invite and maybe even challenge the folks watching today, like, how can you create 5 uninterrupted minutes for yourself to prioritize your self-care and well-being?
Yeah. And let's talk about too the other side of the prioritization, because sometimes we get so, as humans, not even just therapists and healers, everybody, we get paralyzed in trying to plan out the perfect 5 minutes that it never happens. And I always say I'm a reverse engineer in my brain. I don't know if it's because I'm left-handed. I always like to see the outcome and then go backward to see what's required, versus trying to start with something from scratch and then I just don't know where to go. That's more overwhelming for me with anxiety. And so if we can see the end goal in mind of, wow, if I did something like this for 5 minutes a day, just even to commit to a week, because sometimes we're committing to like, well, it got to be 90 days, commit to 7 days. You ain't even did one. If we can commit to 7 days and be consistent with that, see what the outcome is. And I'm a visual person. See and visualize what you want the outcome to be, and then work toward that so that you can have some type of reward system. I think for those who get in their head, because I can see someone right now overthinking this, like, you don't know my household, I got these kids, or I'm a single parent, I ain't got time for that. And it's like, but again, are we hypocrites now as healers going out telling all these people in the world, you got to make time for yourself, you got to fill your cup overflow, and then you're not making time for yourself? Like, come on.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's real. And I think that that's that embodied approach that, I was talking about. We cannot help people help themselves when we over here struggling. Like, I do not believe in that. And everything that I teach, I say, y'all, I believe in living a stress-free life, right? Stress is going to come, but my prioritization of my mental health and well-being is the thing that's going to allow me to show up for the kids, for the family, for, you know what I'm saying, for my clients, and so on and so forth. And so when folks say, oh, you don't know my household, you don't know this, you don't know that, well, it's like, it's going to catch up to you, right? So do you want to have a long lasting career? Do you want to have a fruitful career? Do you want to have a career that feels good? Or do you just want to be in the right now and eventually burn out a few months or maybe a couple of years later? And I think that the proof is in the pudding. I mean, we're in a state where so many therapists are leaving the field because they're burning out. And what I want them to understand, right? But what I want them to understand is, if you take these same habits with you into the coaching field, into whatever other field you're going into, you're also going to burn out there too. Okay. Because it's not about the career. It's about how you are moving in that career and what you are doing for yourself as you are continuing to pour.
Yeah. I would even add that their stress is going to get worse, because if we look at like something that's very popular right now, which is the digital product space, right? Therapists can definitely get into the digital product space, but it's like a foreign language. And so like one thing that I love about still actively being a psychologist, even though I'm gonna say 90% of my time is dedicated to digital products, I still make it a point to integrate the psychology and being up to date with my coaching business, because it's something about constantly being in that movement that will maybe keep us sane, keep us calm. So for example, my podcast, I talk about self-care, I talk about vacations, I talk about abundant mindset, because those are the things that I've integrated in psychology to like help people who come out of jail. They don't know how to think positive. They don't even know what that looks like. I bring that into their trauma-informed care workshops. That's what we do before we introduce what is trauma and what is vicarious trauma, because now I've broken down the barrier. And so I love what you said about kind of like the behavior or the patterns following people like baggage wherever they go, because I just want to put that on the bigger screen. That is a big problem. And you're going to actually burn out, to me, faster if you're trying to code switch, because now you're like going off on the deep end and forgetting all your therapeutic skills versus could you just still see 2 clients so you can be up on your game for your own self-care? Because if you're teaching other people how to do it, what typically happens in a therapy session? I know I've had this. Let me know if you or anybody else who's watching has had this happen. You are in the flow of a session and you killing it. You doing a good job with your client. And then you have a little voice in your head that says like, but you ain't doing that. Or you should go back to doing that. How dare you? And I'm like, and my client would be like, why are you taking notes? I'm like, don't worry about it. Because I need to remind myself what I'm telling them. But where's that reminder when you try to skedaddle out the field?
That part. No, I'm here with you. And it's like, listen, we have to, practice what we teach. I'm a big believer in that. And, the less that we practice what we teach, the more it'll show up in how we're moving and being, right? And so that little voice is probably your intuition saying, hey, baby, it's time for you to get back to pouring into your cup. And I don't want to self such a disservice when we're only focused in on giving our clients the goods, right? So people say, oh, I'm better at giving advice than receiving advice. But we really have to flip that, right? We really got to be able to flip that. And we have to walk the walk, right? We have to be walking the walk and not just talking the talk when we're talking about healing and prioritizing our self-care. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. Let's pull up this question because she's one of our clients where she's the one that's doing the retreat. She's in Florida. So Melissa says, in what point of business development do you see therapists, and we can also apply this to ourselves too. Do you see therapists or healers get burnt out the most? For example, do you see therapists develop this in the startup phase, in the, okay, I'm growing, going, or like, I want to leverage my time, hire a team? I'll go ahead and turn that over to you before I put my little 2 cents in.
Yeah, no, I think this is a really great question. So I think, it's important to understand that the fundamentals of pouring into your cup is beneficial no matter what stage you are in business development. I also help, therapists scale beyond private practice. And so, I work with folks at the startup growth and the scaling phase. And one of the things that I think it's important for us to remember that there is always a point in your business, particularly when you're in the startup phase, where you are going to have to put some elbow grease in and really like get to work, right? But the point is you're not always going to be there, right? But even in the elbow grease, I'm getting to work, I'm starting up the business, you still can create space for prioritizing your self-care. What I notice a lot is, and tell me if you notice this too, Dr. TK, is that folks go all in the startup phase, completely forget about their self-care. Then they finally make it to the scaling phase and they're like, girl, I don't even know if I want to do this business anymore. And that's exactly what we're talking about, right? It's something that you have to be consistent with, because it really doesn't matter what phase of business that you're in. If you don't have that foundational understanding that you have to, and again, it's not always vacations, right? It's not always retreats, but have you taken 5 minutes, right? We've been there, I've been an entrepreneur for over a decade. I know what it's like to start up several businesses. I know what it's like to grow and scale several businesses. But one of the reasons why I haven't burnt out is because of this understanding, right? That I need to pour into my cup just a little bit at a time. And so while in the startup phase, I honor the grind and the hustle that's required to start and grow a business. But understanding that scaling can't be your self-care strategy always, right? You can't, burn yourself out 3 years growing a business and then finally get to the point of scaling and say, okay, now I'll take my 5 to 10 minutes a day. So hopefully that answers your question.
No, I mean, it does. And I'm going to add on like language that a lot of our clients do understand, which is the marathon versus a sprint, but I'm going to intertwine it with what you talked about. So if I can put it in phases, and then I'll give a gym example, right? Is when you first start a business with the hustle and grind, you want to think about it more as a marathon. And I say a marathon because hell, you don't know when it's going to end because you're just starting. But in a
Right.
marathon, you do have to train, right? You have to put on the right shoes. You have to find the right trainer. You have to run at the right pace in the beginning because you're going to get blisters on your feet. If you're running a 10K, please don't start trying to run a 10K on the first day. Your coach may tell you to run a 1K. So the equivalency that I see it as, and I'm in this mentorship group for women, and they have like a 30-day challenge to be on a Stairmaster, right? And I call it the Stair Monster. And so one girl in there saying, man, 10 minutes, I think it was like 20 minutes that, everybody doing. And this girl, she didn't usually do it. So she was like, 10 minutes, man, took me out. And so I just went in there, not a coach as a health coach or anything. I just said, one tip, because this is the marathon mindset. One tip, if you've never done it, go at a slower pace, at a pace that you can keep up. Don't try to keep up with the person on the Stairmaster next to you or what somebody posted yesterday. You don't know what their training level was before they started this game. And sometimes we anticipate, oh, they're starting a private practice. I'm starting a private practice. We're in the same game. And I always tell our clients, like, if y'all wouldn't know my background working in the county, you would just think, oh, she likes paperwork. She's organized. But most people wouldn't know that working in an aftercare juvenile program, half of my job, literally 50% of my job that they threw on me after I got in there is that I became the quality assurance psychologist of juvenile justice. Juvenile justice in the whole LA County, if y'all know how big LA County is. And so as you could imagine, growing a business, where do you think I embraced my natural organizational skills with my job experience? But if you just saw me on the Stairmaster next to you or in your Zoom coaching call next to you, you would just assume, well, she's just more organized, but we at the same pace. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to start moving way faster than you by the third day. And if you try to keep up, you're going to have blisters on your feet. And those blisters are going to say, my cup is empty. I'm burnt out. This ain't for me. I should just go on a treadmill. No, you need to go back to 1.0. That's what you need to do. And like stay steady, right? So I see here, let's see. So Melissa says, sometimes I give homework to my clients and they come back with how well things went and like, oh, I should try that. Okay. She laughing at the marathon and the blisters.
No.
Yeah, but I think it's a very good topic. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I really love that example and also to that comparison, right? I think that many times, folks come into this entrepreneurial space as therapists and they're looking to, I see what Dr. TK has done. I'm seeing what Lenaya has done and I'm gonna get there in 6 months. And it's like, no, you've got to run your own marathon, right? Yeah. You've got to pace yourself and also seek the guidance of folks who have been where you want to be, are at where you want to go, and truly listen, right? It's not one of those things where I can see that they're doing the things and I'm going to try to piece it together by myself. No, that's why mentorship is really, really important as well.
Can you speak on that? Because one of the areas that I find, and I mean, I don't know if they're going to agree with me or not, I can only go based off assumption because nothing has been answered, is I often will bring up pride and ego. And one of the things that our team have been talking about, because again, we're just having conversations on assumptions based on metrics. That's all we can do if people aren't telling us what's going on as to why they are not growing at the pace they desire,
Yeah.
And so, we often talk about like, what is it that they're not getting the results that they want outside of like the online course? Let's push this to the side. And I said, to be honest, if I were to put myself in their shoes and erase all the knowledge that I know, and I go back to like 10 to 12 years ago, but let's just say I still have the work experience that I have, just not the coaching experience, no mentorship experience. What I would look at is, well, gosh, I've been a clinical psychologist for over a decade. I did all this work in this community. And what you don't realize is that your ego is getting in the way of you asking for help, because you may take on the naive assumption that the coaching industry, the digital product industry should come natural to you, but it doesn't. And then I sit in, let's just say I sign up for a mentorship program. And then I'm sitting there, and this has happened to me even recently. I'll look around and I'm like, I don't know if these people are on my level. Like what is on your level? Because it depends on why you're there. But if it's a business level, you never know again what somebody's backstory is. Just because they're learning like you doesn't mean that they don't have a wealth of knowledge in another area that's going to help you. So can you talk about maybe the mind, like somebody may be listening to this and they're actually at the growth phase. I see a lot of our clients at the growth phase. That's not the problem.
Mm-hmm.
They are having a problem with making the decision to get help to then go to the scale phase because they've already got help in the growth phase. And it's like the mindset of, I got to invest again, time and money. I need more mentorship. Can I just listen to the podcast? So can you talk about that mindset shift between grow and scale? Because that's where a lot of them are right now.
Absolutely. And, you know, that shift between grow and scale, the startup phase to the growth phase requires a different set of skills from the growth phase to the scale phase, right? And so a lot of times the same skill sets and things that you learn between the startup and the growth phase aren't necessarily transferable to the growth and the scale phase, right? You know how they say it's easier to make, it's easier to make $100,000 than it is to make $30,000, right? It's because, you know, it's a different set of skills. And so I'm a big believer that we should always want to be investing in ourselves. We should always want to be in the seat of student, because you never know, right, what someone else has to offer you. I'm a big lover of masterminds, right? So people coming together in the same kind of phase of their business and really masterminding with someone who's at the scale phase or who has scaled, right? Yep. And so the lessons that you learn along the way between growth and scale are much different than the lessons that you learned between startup and growth. And so I understand, I want to, hold space for the fact that you may have a wealth of experience, but, Dr. TK and I, we have a wealth of experience, and we've also invested in that growth to scale phase. Right. And so I think that it's one of those things that you got to put your ego to the side if you want to get to where you want to go to. Right. And someone who's been, again, where you want to be will be able to give you, quote unquote, the shortcut, right? So that you're not listening to 20 podcasts at a time, right? You're not watching, 50 different YouTube videos. You'll join a 6-month mentorship program and get there much quicker than you would have trying to piece it together. And I also want to just bring our focus back to that communal part that I talked about. Masterminds and mentorship is community, right? It's being able to be guided by someone who gets it. It's being able to be guided by someone who has gone to where you're trying to go. And so I'll just say this, don't let the pride and the ego get in the way, because outside of learning from someone, you also build relationships, right?
Yes,
you also build relationships with people who are on the same journey as you. And so it's really a win-win.
Yeah. So it's crazy. So y'all, I had talked to her offline. What was that? About a month and a half to 2 months ago or something like that. And then our team was like, when are you going to have her on? And at first I was going to have you on during the launch period, because I'm like, oh, self-care will be good for the starter ups. But then when we start planning out this like evolution of therapists in business and self-care, and I start like tweaking my brand too, to incorporate like self-care and mindset of therapists, I'm like, oh, maybe I can have her in May, because that would be a joy. Then you're going to be by Sonia, because she also talked about self-care and health last week. And I do want to bring this topic because a lot of our viewers and listeners and community, I know deep inside, they love and they also miss getting in person. Being in business is a very isolated space, especially after 2020. Even if you have a private practice office, really think about it. Like, you are in your office going to the lobby to get your clients, and you're going right back to an office. You're with your client. The session ain't about you, so you're still isolated. And then you have lunch by yourself, or you go somewhere where it's strangers and you don't talk to nobody because you've been talking to people all day, right? So like, you're still isolated, and it's something about getting in those different environments. So I know you do retreats and maybe do other, like, you've also been a student in masterminds. Can you talk about your experience of how in person, even if it's the same information, it's tremendously different when you're in person versus online? Because I want some of them to be able to put that as a priority, that if I or you or anyone else offers something in person, I want them to see that relational component and anything else that you would like to share.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much power in connecting online, right? We're doing it right now, right? We're connecting across time zones and all the things, but there's something about feeling the energy in the room, right? There's something about being able to be in a space where, again, like the women or the people around me get it, right? There's something about being able to embrace, right? Giving a warm embrace. And that's that energy exchange that we talked about as well. And so I think that it's really important for us to seek out, create, and be in spaces in person where we can, be fed both business wise and community wise. And so I'm a big believer, right? If things are in person and it's within your, plan for spending, go, because it's something about, what I will say is, you can go to one event in person and you can be fed for the entire year just from that one experience in person, right?
Yeah.
And so, I lead an annual retreat and I do some other things in person, but the women will tell you their cup has been filled for the entire year just because they took space to be in person. So there's something about that energy exchange that happens in person that is invaluable. And that I think that, really speaks to, again, pouring into your cup, self-care and all the things. Community is a part of that too. Community is most certainly a part of that.
Can I add the word intentional? Because I heard you say if it's in your plan, and I'm going to challenge our community to say, make it a part of your plan. Even if it's May, like don't say, oh, I got to wait to January. No, you don't. It's May 8th. Do it today. Okay. At 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, whatever time it is for you, but make it an intention, because prime example would be like last year, I knew that one of my mentors in Florida, she always, well, I ain't gonna say she always, but post 2020, it did look a little different. But for the last 2 years, she's been having this event in October and November. And if you put the intention out there, it is amazing how things will manifest to get you where you need to be, instead of just waiting to see if a Facebook ad is going to cross your mind, or a podcast like this to say, okay, now I got to scramble because maybe you having a retreat in 60 days. I don't know. But maybe you can set an intention that I want to be somewhere around the world in person. You ain't got to be that specific, but just put it out there and say, these are the things that I want to go to. I want to go to a place where it's other healers, if that's your thing. Because some of y'all may not want to be around other healers. You may want to be around other moms, other couples. It's up to you. But I want to be around other healers. Maybe you want to go outside the United States. So then if you know that that's your intention, then reverse engineer. You don't want to pass up that opportunity because you were not prepared. And so if I knew I wanted to go to Costa Rica and I didn't know when this was going to drop on my lap, or when God was going to say, go ahead, it's yours. Well, then that means I need to make sure that my passport is up to date, because I don't know where I'm going. You know what I'm saying? And so reverse engineer it and then put out the intention. But with the Florida thing, my son is on track system. So he's off like every 3 months for like 3.5 weeks. And we were like, oh, we're gonna go to Walt Disney World, like, as usual, and have some fun or whatever, because it's off season, it's not hot. And so we planned it. And then I kept asking, like, is she gonna have the event? And they were like, they don't know the date. And I'm like, all right, let me just book this Walt Disney World. Literally, I think it was 6 weeks before we were supposed to go. They hit us up and said, oh, we having the event. And I'm like, what day is it? And it was a week after we were going. And I said, God, about to make this work. So I went online. I didn't lose any money. I want you to see how things are working, people. Like, the plane tickets weren't any more expensive than what they were when we first bought them. I was able to move over our timeshare stay that my mom has out there to just the following week. No blocks, right? The weather was great. It was not raining. It was not storming. And I was able to go and, make business and fun out of it. Hell, so the half of the trip was tax write-off, so that was all gravy. So just put the intention out there is what I'm saying, so that you can make things happen. So what do you have going, coming up? Do you have, like, we can put everything in the show notes, but let us know what's up in your second and third quarter of the year.
Absolutely. So I am planning an in-person mastermind for therapists who take a holistic approach to the way that they work and are wanting to scale beyond private practice. So doing things like memberships, retreats, courses, coaching, things like that. And I'll drop the finalized date to you. And also, as we're talking about being in person and talking about the Healers Retreat, we did ours for 2024, but 2025, if you want to be intentional, 2025, we're going to Bali, November 2025. And so I'll share details about that. The doors open to the wait list soon. So if you want to go ahead and be intentional about 2025 and joining us in Bali, I would love to have you there. And those are the in-person things. Are we talking virtual now or just in person?
Well, everything.
Okay.
Because we have different clinicians in different phases, and I am not a stranger to, like, I don't like to gatekeep, and so I want therapists to be able to make choices of
Yes.
where they want to be, because we just finished talking about being intentional. So if they
Yes.
know they can't do it now, but they like, Bali, November 2025, I have a year and a half. So I got a year and a half to at least get my passport, like,
That's
or update it or something. Get these kids a
That
babysitter.
Yes, being intentional. So there's that. And then also too, if you're on the journey of prioritizing your self-care and wanting to create more space, I have a membership called the Holistic Healing Circle, specifically for therapists, healers, and entrepreneurs. And so in that membership, you get access to a library full of practices like yoga, breathwork, and sound. You also have live practices as well. And so if you're and there's a community piece as well. So if you're like, listen, I need to be guided, I need to be able to turn on my phone during my 5 minutes to be guided through a practice, the Holistic Healing Circle is also a great offer for you. And last but not least, I'm running a free Drink As You Pour series for Mental Health Awareness Month. And so every Wednesday during the month of May, I'll be coming on and leading a live sound healing and breathwork practice. And then we'll end the month with a live healer circle where we'll come together, be in community, talk about what it's been like to prioritize our self-care and healing as well.
So let's make this easier, because I know sometimes on social media and on our websites, everything that you listed, when it becomes available, it is available. So one thing that I always recommend for anyone who views or listens to these podcasts is, priority-wise, stay connected via whatever feed you want them to go to. And like, let's just say with Instagram, just turn on the notifications, because as she had mentioned with like the wait list, we don't know when the wait list is going to open. We don't know certain dates, but if you have notifications on, and then engage with her so that the algorithm can pick up that y'all like each other, but engage with her stuff. So with the free content or the thing that she has going on this May, so that when the wait list drops, when the mastermind information drops, you won't also miss it. Because some of you will miss things simply because you're still in burnout season and you ain't paying attention to nothing that we just talked about today. So how can they find you over on social media? And we're definitely going to link that up and just point everybody to like the link in your bio.
Absolutely. So it's at Lenaya S. Crawford on all social platforms.
Okay. So we'll make sure to link that up in the audio podcast show notes, in the YouTube show notes. So every time we wrap up, I like to ask like some type of question. So when you think about serving well, actually, you know what? Let's focus on ourselves. I'm gonna switch this up. So usually it's about a client, but let's do us. So tell us about one big, it don't have to be all the details if you don't want to share, but what is one big self-care success that you can admire about yourself because you took care of yourself and filled your own cup?
One self-care success, honestly, slow mornings. Slow mornings has been a self-care success for me. Back in the day, as soon as I woke up, after I said my prayers, I was on the phone checking the emails. And so my self-care success is waking up, saying my prayers, and being intentional about moving slow. So today I did a devotional. I made myself some tea and I went on a walk around the block before then getting into what I had to do for the day. So that's my self-care success, having more slow mornings.
Yeah. So I'm gonna link up. I love that. I started doing that too when I started researching, well, what is this soft life stuff? Because everybody kept saying it. And I was like, I grew up just around testosterone. I'll just leave it at that. So like I feel like I should be listening to stuff like this. And one of the themes that came up with one girl that I follow is slow mornings. And I love how she also shows what her slow mornings look like, because I'm a very visual person. And I will just highlight this, like, despite what kind of family or household setup people have, even if it's shared living space, you have to make, as you had mentioned earlier, just to like cap this off, is you have to make space for your self-care intentional space. Like when I used to work with moms, I would tell them, I went to Old Navy one time, they had those door hangers. And it was like, do not disturb. And I asked the cashier, I'm like, can I get like 3 of these? And they were like, why? I said, I'm a therapist. I leverage my title then. And they gave me 3. And I'm like, I work with moms, so they gave it to me. And, I started giving it to my moms, and then I started incorporating their kids into the session, and they were like 13, 6. But I told like the 13 and 14-year-olds, I'm like, y'all need to take care of the 5 and 6-year-olds because mommy needs 15 minutes to herself. So for us, it may be slow mornings. For anyone who's listening, it may be in the middle of the day. For somebody else, it may be if your kids ain't looking through the window, maybe you need to sit in the car in the garage for about 15 minutes to then shift. But these are practical things, again, that we have no problem telling our clients, but we're not doing them. So I love that slow mornings. Let me come over here. So, hey, hello, Dr. Angela. She focused on self-care too. And specifically like Black women, holistic. So everybody who just chimed in, y'all want to make sure that y'all go and rewatch this or re-listen to it. Deandra said, yes, so mornings. Okay, yeah, be intentional. Okay. She's also a journaler, so she puts pen to paper. All right. So I've enjoyed you. I'm sure that everybody else has enjoyed this podcast. Again, if you are new here, welcome. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Y'all intentional. I need 20 more subscribers to hit my goal of 2024 already. 5,000. So I'm like, whoa, it's hitting faster than I thought. But I just love pouring into the community and also bringing other people to pour into the community as well. So for y'all who are watching, stay connected. We have another duel next Wednesday where we are bringing on actually Melissa, and then we're also bringing on Shayla to talk about the ins and outs of business and self-care, also as being a mom, but then also talking directly to the therapist about, because they're support coaches in our program, like how can they help them pay it forward to start scaling their business, but also taking care of themselves, especially as moms and wives, because that's key too. So, all right, y'all have a great rest of y'all week. Bye.